Hi there. I'm going to walk you through the best techniques for learning Chinese words that we know of. And we've spent thousands and thousands of hours in live and online classes, as well as all the communications we've had with members of our course over the last couple of years, perfecting these techniques. Now, just like with the Hansa movie method, the mnemonic visualization system that we use for memorizing characters, it works very, very well. But we're always learning, we're always developing it based on feedback we get from you and of course our own discoveries. So this is by no means the be all and end all. We're always adding more and more things to this list. But over the years, we've found that there are a handful of key techniques that work the best, and we haven't found anything else that works better in terms of the speed and efficiency and the enjoyment of using it. So essentially, you have to learn words with review words using flashcards. That's the best way of doing it in terms of efficiency. But in terms of learning those words, primarily we need to focus on a variety of mnemonic connections that we like to call living links. And we think they come in four different major categories. We found that these four aspects, personal memories, the characters of the word, the sounds, and of course images, are the four key components you need to focus on in order to learn a word effectively. You could focus on just one of these, or a combination of all of them, or a combination of any of them. But before we jump into exactly how to make these connections, I'm going to jump into a ton of examples for you today. Let's talk about the very starting point. When you sit down, you start your, let's say, vocabulary learning session. What's the first things you're going to want to do? What are your priorities? So first thing you want to do is relax. Okay, this is essentially free thought, free association is what they call it. And the best way to free associate and access your deepest memories and access the most interesting, fun, mnemonic memories or links, living links, is to relax and have fun. And do it in short bursts. You can time box. You can maybe do 5, 10, 20, 25 minutes. And that's your session. And have fun with it. Next is important to understand the meaning. Now, that sounds really obvious, but oftentimes you'll get a definition of a word, and it's just one or two English words. It says, this means box, for example. But actually, there can be many kinds of boxes, and they have different names in Chinese. So you want to make sure that in your mind you have the image of the correct definition. So you're not, shooting yourself in the foot from the get-go. So of course you look it up, you get an idea of the definition, but that's obvious. We'll provide a definition, of course, or multiple definitions on our course, and you can obviously check Pleco, your go-to dictionary, Pleco. Download that if you don't have it. You can read an example sentence if the word is a little bit maybe abstract. You want to get some ideas. How is it used? Just look at the English translation. That's fine if you don't understand the whole sentence. Just to get a feel for what that word actually means, just to confirm that. And if that's not enough, like for example with my 盒子 and 箱子 example, where they both mean box in English, but they're very different in terms of how they're used. You would do an image search. So I gave you two examples. So here's 盒子. So if you look up 盒子, it means box. But you can see just by the images that it's generally a small box, like the kind you put an engagement ring in, or a small gift. But if I type the other example I gave you, which is 箱子, it's bigger. It's like those big plastic boxes or a big cardboard box. But in English, they're both called box. That would be the translation, and that's not much use. So that's an example of just confirm that you know what the actual meaning is. You have a visual idea in your mind. Next step, recall the character meanings. Now, sometimes I put, of course, meanings, multiple, because many characters have multiple meanings. Just make sure you know what each character means. One definition will be fine, but actually the more definitions you know of a specific character, the more connections you'll be able to make, which is why this whole process of learning words and everything that we're going to do in this video becomes easier the more Chinese you know. All right, but no worries if you only know one definition, or there is only one definition, that's fine. How do the characters connect with each other? What's their relationship? And how does their connection connect to the keyword? How do those characters represent the keyword? Sometimes it's obvious in Chinese, and many more Chinese words function like the word playground in English, for example. They're very clear relationships, but some of them aren't. Some of them you have to maybe put a bit more sweat into figuring out what connection or making up a connection. What connection can you see? That's another important point to mention, is that the connection doesn't actually have to be real. It's just what connection can you see between the characters. But don't worry, I'm going to run into lots of examples, like I said, and I'll show you how to see these connections. Next, after you've understood the meaning of the word, you understand at least one definition of each of the characters involved, say the word out loud. This is actually very important because it gives you a lot of ideas about sound mnemonic connections you can make. So does the word sound like anything else? Words from another language that you know or that you've heard of? Does it sound like any other Chinese words? And this is actually a very common one because there's very few pronunciations in Chinese. So maybe, this word is pronounced exactly the same or in a similar way to another word, but just with a different tone, or sometimes with exactly the same tone as well. Can I connect to that other word's meaning using a mnemonic? And it gets silly, and it will get silly as we do this video. But the sillier, the funnier, the whatever, just the crazier, the better. Okay. And even if any of the connections that we're talking about seem kind of tenuous, doesn't matter if it's silly or crazy, it stands out in some way, it will still work. So now that I've given you a rundown of all of the major living link types, let's do some examples. I've prepared a bunch, I think about 15 or so, and I've, of course, apart from preparing the actual slides themselves, I haven't really thought about what links I'm going to choose beforehand because I want this to be real. And I want you to see my sort of way of thinking live. Now, I'm Luke, I'm not you. So I'm going to make connections that you wouldn't, and you're going to make connections that I wouldn't. So the connections that I make aren't the connections that you should make, just to make that clear. Okay, so I'm just going to choose some stuff. Maybe you'll go for some completely different direction. The point of this video is to show you the process, just the general process, and highlight the guidelines of how to approach this whole thing. So here's our first word, 随便, 随便, 随便. So say it out loud. The meaning is casual, random, informal. And the characters 随 means to follow or to look like, and convenient. So bien means convenient, but it also means excrement, right? It means like it could be poo or pee, right? So there's two very different definitions. That's quite rare, actually. So we can maybe use that, but I don't want to use that in this particular video. But you could go that direction if you wanted, right? You could use that particular definition. So 随便, to follow convenience. So yeah, that just makes sense to me, right? So to be casual is to follow what is convenient. You're following the convenient path. So that's kind of a mnemonic idea. That makes sense. Those characters are very clearly connected with each other. So I could maybe write that down as a note. So this will be in your flashcards, of course, you know, to follow the convenient path. You know, make that clear there, to follow the convenient path. That's what being casual and laid back and informal is. Oh, this is easier. You know, so being formal is not easy, right? You put on a suit, you're smiling more, pretending, more niceties. Whereas you're casual, it's more convenient. It's much more simple. Okay, so that's one way, but that's the connection between the characters, right? That's quite obvious. Is there any sound connection we can think of? Sui, 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 su. Su is a name of a woman. It's also to sue someone. Sui, suhi, I'm suing him, and bien, bien. I can't really see any sound connection there at the moment, but you could say someone. Okay, right. So bien sounds like being, right? I sue him, sue he, but he's being casual, right? So I can connect that. So now, what that does to me right now, sui bien, sui. That's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous, but that's the whole point. Does it sound anything like it? And I'll mention something else about this sound aspect that's very cool regarding Chinese in a minute. But let's just follow this train of thought. That's what you want to do. Follow your trail of thoughts, right? Even if it seems silly, but if you have any connection is great, right? So I think of someone being sued or in court and they're being very casual about it. They should be very scared. And so I'm thinking immediately something comes to mind. I recently watched, or I showed my wife, the British show Sherlock. Sherlock, let's say Moriarty, and there's a scene where Moriarty in court, he's in court and he's got arrested on purpose because he's like this, evil mark. Yes, and there's a picture of him looking very relaxed. There you go. That'll do. So I'll go to Google Images. I'll just copy that directly. I think I have to click on it first. Now you want to make sure as well that if you're going to do this sort of sound component, because imagine you have this in your flashcards, right? This picture of Moriarty looking relaxed in a courtroom, and then it's Sui Bien. It works, right? It still works. This picture alone will work, but you might also want to just put a reminder of what your sound connection was. So I'm just going to put mine in capitals. He Bien. Casual. It sound, and the cool thing is about this, it will work really well for me personally, but it might not work well for you. But it will work. If it works for you, it works really, really well because you thought of this connection. Of course, you don't have to have all three, so I'm just showing you everything that you can do. But so far, we've seen images, personal connection, because I personally have seen the show Sherlock, and that's what I'm connecting to. Right, the characters, they are related to each other. I've written a mnemonic there, and the sound. Okay, so that's pretty good, right? That's more than enough, more than we'll need. And when you're doing this in reality, just spend a minute or two. Think of one connection and move on. If you can think of more easily, like naturally it just comes to you, then go ahead, put as many as you can. But if you can only think of one in the moment, don't strain yourself trying to think of 3 or 4 like I just did, okay? So let's move on to the next word. That's another key thing as well. Once you've got a connection, once you've got an image, you need at least one image. Move on, okay? 比较, to compare, or relatively. So the definition that I know best is to compare. Oh, no, actually, relatively. Yeah, like when you're saying, oh, this is more than this. This is more something than this. Okay. Now, look at the characters here. Compare and compare. The connection is so obvious, it writes itself. So I can't really use that. There's not really a cool mnemonic I can make between these two characters, like to compare and to compare. Okay, so that's out the window. I'm not really going to make a mnemonic based on the characters. 比较, 比较. I guess BGs, like I'm looking at BG like Fiji. So BGs, ow. I've got a picture in my mind of the Bee Gees, or that guy. I don't even know anything about the Bee Gees. I don't know the lead singer's name, but I just remember a picture of him. Let's just try that. Let's just go down that road, okay? BG singing. And maybe if I can get him like with an owl sort of sound as well. Okay, they're sort of going E at the moment. BG owl. That'll do. Yeah, this one will do here. So I would take this image for the Bee Gees, and I could maybe put that in, and my connection will be this. Okay, that's just ridiculous, right? But they say BG say ow, BG ow, BG ow, say more than other bands. So let's say that that's not quite good enough for me. Now, usually I would just move on. I've got a connection that seems okay. BG ow, BG ow. That's good enough for me, right? But let's explore a little bit more, because this video is designed to explain a little bit deeper, right? So let's think of a few cool techniques that we can do. First thing we can do is just search for the English word, compare. And when you type that into Google, notice what comes up. Predictions, predictive text, let's say. Compare, clip art as well is another cool technique. Compare and contrast, compare and contrast. That doesn't really help at the moment. That's not really helping me. So let's just type in the word compare. Yeah, okay, so we're getting a lot of apples and oranges. Remember this, any image is better than no image. So if you spend 30 seconds on this, the entire process, 30 seconds, 1 minute max really for each word, and you're not happy with your living link, Just choose any picture that clearly represents the one of the meanings, the meaning you have in mind, and that compares it fine to me. Right, so I can just leave it at that. Right, and I'll put that word, I'll put that image in my flashcard. Boom, move on to the next word. Another cool thing we can do is try YouTube. Google and YouTube are the two biggest search engines in the world. Okay, so we can go compare. Oh, yeah, why can't I spell compare? See what anything predictive that comes up. So when I type in compare on YouTube, I'm getting similar things, apples and oranges, lots of stuff for kids. Don't compare yourself to others. Does that trigger anything for you? So comparing yourself to others, maybe that makes you think of a time in your life when you did that. What do you compare yourself against? Does that remind you of another movie or video or TV show that you've seen or a computer game you've played? Maybe you can search for that, and you end up doing like a string of searches to find a really good connection. Movies, same script, comparing and writing, story. Yeah, so this is not really coming up massively. Influential people, comparing that. So you think of the top lists of people. Okay, so I see a picture of Donald Trump with Reagan. So I'm thinking of comparing people, right? So how can I think of comparing two people? So I'm seeing lots of adverts of cars, comparing various cars. So maybe I could just do like a comparison, compare car, type in that, see what comes up. Nothing comes up? Okay, fine. Compare, just here's a little trick you can do. Just type in the word compare and funny. Okay. So this is a bit harsh, but this is brilliant. So this is it seems kind of silly, right? Kind of lame, right? You just type in the word funny after the definition. But like I said before, any picture is better than no picture. And if you can think of a funny picture, this picture of Snoop Dogg next to this actual dog is going to be way more effective than a picture of apple and orange. Right, but you can put in both. That's fine, and the Bee Gees, whatever. You can do as many as you like. But what I'm trying to show you is something that some of these are actually making me laugh. Right, so that's a trick that you can use. There's a lot more, but let's focus on the next word. Okay, 已经. I purposefully chose words that were quite tough. Like if you had a car, if you had a word that was like the word car or road, for example, 马路. You would just search for a picture of a road or some sort of, and maybe try and make it personal. Maybe make it the road from Forrest Gump when he's running. I have that in my mind. Okay, you'd think of a specific road, but generally that's very, very straightforward. I'm going for more abstract words here. They're a bit more of a challenge, at least in this section. So 已经 means already, and it's made up of two characters, already and to undergo. Now it's kind of tough for me personally when the word, one of the characters or both of the characters mean the final meaning. So already and already, just like with the previous word. That kind of makes it less interesting, less for me personally. Already undergone. To jing means a bunch of different things, but one of the definitions that we've got is to undergo or to go through something like an experience, and already. So let's see if we can connect to these characters. 已经, already undergone something. So someone has already been through something. So I'm thinking of maybe a soldier who's been through a war. He's been there, he's done that, he's got this sort of grizzled expression on his face. So I'll find a picture of old soldier, like a tough, so I might get a picture of that. That's a connection that comes up for me. He's already seen, I don't know, like he's already seen the wars. He doesn't want to go, he doesn't want to see it anymore. Maybe you could have something less dark. An old soldier, already. Let's just type in the word already. Oh, do you know what? I just typed in the word. These things can happen where you'll just have a neuron in your brain will fire at some point. Okay. So I just thought of, here's one I made earlier. That idea of something that's already been done. So here's one I made earlier. Can you think of an exact show where someone would do that a lot? I remember there's a very British show called Blue Peter. Fantastic. Look at that. This is a bit of an older version than I'm used to, but I could think I could get a picture of Blue Peter because I used to watch this TV show. It's a very British show. Maybe you don't, but I'm sure. I think you have like in America, maybe you have like Martha Stewart. I think she did something similar when she had her cooking shows and stuff. I seem to remember that. But find a picture that speaks to you of your maybe actually an episode that you've actually seen or something like that. So I might choose this one. Here's a little rule for you. It sounds obvious, but I thought I'd mention. Please don't have the actual. Anytime you see the actual definition, maybe you have like the word already. Just general. Trying to stay away from English words. Maybe I would just take a picture of her like this, like a screenshot, and just do that and put that in my flashcards instead. And then maybe I would also for 已经 here. I might write this in my flashcards as well. Here's one I made earlier, just so I have that connection. I don't forget it. Because sometimes when you have connections in the moment, you can forget those connections later on. And you just have this weird picture of someone from Blue Peter. Why is that already? So maybe it's just a few words, maybe just one or two words is fine. Some sort of connection. Anything with the eating, it sounds like eating. Eating sounds like eating. So I could have someone that is maybe someone maybe overweight or someone that's with something here, like they've just eaten something they shouldn't have, and they've already eaten the thing. Maybe something from The Simpsons. Some sort of pop culture reference of someone eating something too early and they already ate that. You get the idea. Your brain starts making these connections as long as you're relaxed and you have fun. Okay. So this next word here, 正常, means normal, and it's made up of 正, which means correct or to correct, and 常, which means often or constant. Right. So I'm going to go for correct and often there. So see if any connections come in my mind there. Just looking at correct, and something is correct and it's done often. That's normal. So what is normal that is done correctly and often? Maybe that's. No, so it's not really ringing any bells for me. Again, it might for you personally, but it doesn't for me. It's not that the connection between the characters isn't firing any neurons. So, 正常, and that doesn't sound like anything in English, and it doesn't really sound like much other Chinese words I can think of either. So that's a no-go, right? So what am I going to do? I can't connect to the sound. I can't connect to the characters. What do I think of personally? Do I have any personal idea of what is normal or normality? Well, one thing that I think about the idea of normal is that it doesn't really exist, right? Normal. What's a normal day? Okay, so I'm thinking of lately, because I moved to a very nice part of China where I have blue skies all the time. I have a new kind of normal weather, right? Which is now blue skies. But I would think the normal weather in England is actually overcast. So I would think of British overcast weather, right? And just to see if I can get some extra funny pictures, I'll type in funny. Okay. No, but yeah. So I don't personally like using these kinds of these sort of newspaper things. So let's just okay, yeah. And actually, I kind of miss England. I do love the English weather too. I do like this sort of cloudy weather. I might put like that. That reminds me. Okay, so that's the British countryside with some overcast weather, and then I put maybe a note in my flashcard as well. The Deng Tang, right? I would say. So this is often in the UK. It is normal. So normal. No, overcast is normal. Yeah. Overcast is normal. Happens often. So I'm trying to put one of the characters in there. Although I can't really, to be honest with you, see how I'm going to put correct. It's not really correct. Or I could say no need to correct it because it's normal. So I'll just make that italic so I know that it's one of the characters. I'll make this capitals so I know it's the definition. Right? So this is quite a long mnemonic, but spending 30 seconds thinking about a mnemonic and typing it out, if it's going to help you memorize the word forever, that's one very common word. It's worth it, and you can actually combine it with a visualization of whatever you're trying. Not just the image, but actually imagine it in your mind. like we do with the hands and moving method with our character mnemonic system. Actually imagine some rainy, overcast weather in Britain. Not very pleasant to imagine, I know. But I think that will work for me. Remember something. I'm just going to pause a little bit here before I move on to the next character, or word, sorry. It doesn't have to be perfect. I've already told you that, but you can always edit these flashcards that you make. You can just hit the edit key and edit them. And so later on down the line, when you're reviewing this word, perhaps, maybe you think of a better image, you think of a better personal connection, you think of a sound mnemonic that you couldn't think of before because it just comes to you. Remove and replace and move on. Okay, this is quite an interesting one. 高兴. 高兴 means happy. So I want to know what kind of happy. First of all, I want to define this, get a visual idea. Is it the kind of happy you get, it's like satisfaction from growing some food and farming it and eating it with your family, or marrying the right woman or man and raising some great kids and they go to university? Is it that kind of happiness, or is it I'm watching my favorite TV show and I'm happy right now? So let's have a look. Let's type in remember, the best way to do this is to type it in Chinese, so you get a Chinese idea of what it means. And this doesn't always work, by the way. Sometimes the characters will be the same as some boy band in China or Korea or something, and you end up getting a bunch of Korean boy band pictures or whatever. It's not always perfect, but it's a good start. It usually works to get a general idea. So I searched for Gaoxing in Google, and I'm getting lots of pictures of little kids like, yay, I've got flowers, yay, I'm happy. So it looks like the kind of happiness that's sort of in the moment. Now, I might be able to just take one of these images and move on, right? If I was feeling a bit lazy, or I feel like it's kind of an easy word, I'll just grab a picture of one of these kids dancing, or yay, okay, so she looks happy. That's actually quite funny as well. It's quite a funny little picture. I might take that and just move on to the next word. That's fine. But sometimes you want to go a bit deeper and you want to think about it a bit more. And especially because if I did that, I wouldn't necessarily have a strong memory of the characters, like a connection to the individual characters. And that's very important. Gao, Xing. So let's see what the characters are. So Gao and Xing. So Xing means excitement, and high or tall. So high excitement. I'm high on life, for example. So that's like an idea. So if you have your flashcard here, and you think high on life, high on life, or high excitement levels, right? So that works well for me. So the idea of high excitement levels. Maybe if I typed in high excitement, see what will come up. Brilliant. All right. So I had no idea that would work. I could even put in that image too. Oh, okay. So my excitement is high. I'm happy. Right. I'll just put in that image of my excitement levels going up. That would also work. And sometimes some of these stock photos, by the way, just a little point, some of these stock photos are so cheesy that they're actually funny, and you might think they wouldn't be effective, but they're so cheesy and bad that they actually work really well. Just put them in. So that one's I'm pretty happy with that. Let's move on. 进步, to progress or progress. So so there's a very clear definition, but let's visualize that definition. It has to be a visual. How would you visualize progress? Getting better and better at something. So the first thing that comes to mind when I think of 进步, like progressing, is those montages, like in Rocky, for example. He's all right at boxing, but he gets beaten, and then he has to go through a montage of, like, I think Rocky, and I have this like factoid in my mind that over half the runtime of Rocky 4 was montages. That's apparently, or something like that. So let's think of a Rocky montage. Yes, okay. I would just choose that image right there. That works for me, or any one of these images really. 进步, and let's get him taking steps. There you go. So that will connect. So I'll just get this particular image of him taking steps, and that's actually Rocky 4, the heavily montage, the one with the longest montages. Or there's another one, him actually taking steps up the steps in Philadelphia, where it was shot. So brilliant. All right, so I'm more than happy. Okay, that's hilarious, but we can't put that one in because that doesn't. That one's probably the best one to go for in this case. Wonderful. Jimbo. I can't think of any sound connection. Jill Swan. Okay, right. So the first thing I think of with it, I haven't even looked. Let's first go through. Let's follow my own guidelines. Let's actually look at the definition, right? So Jill Swan means even if. And the characters are jiu, which means exactly or just, and count, swan. So what I wanted to say just then was jiu swan. It reminds me of jiu also means old for objects, right? So this mobile phone is very old. It's very jiu, and swan can also be garlic. So old garlic. So I'm thinking of even if you paid me, I wouldn't eat that old garlic. And then I get a picture of and then I'd search for gross garlic. No, I think of a vampire. Vampire. Yeah. Yeah, like this picture, right? And would that work for you if you just saw like the Jill Swan and you saw this picture? It has nothing to do with it, but it connects perfectly for me because I think in my mind I could think of this. We didn't have one for Jimbo, did we? No mnemonic. We just went for an image. That's fine. So let's just skip that. Let's go for Jill Swan, right? Jill Swan. Okay. So I'd be like, even if I just quickly type this in. Even if, let's do it capitals, follow my own rules. Even if you paid me, I wouldn't eat that. Jill Swan. All right, that's the two characters. Now that works for me. Maybe you don't know these characters, but you can just write old garlic if you like. But Jill Swan, even if you paid me. Now that works really well for me, actually. I'm really quite proud of that one. It might seem absolutely ridiculous to you and it wouldn't work, but that's my brain, right? It works really well for my brain. 便宜. Now, this is a very interesting word. It means cheap. The reason why it's interesting is because it uses the character bien. And as far as I know, this is the only word where bien is used where it's pronounced pian. Okay. But we'll still take it as meaning convenient, right? Bien, convenient, suitable, appropriate. E. So, okay, so it would be good actually because there's a pronunciation change here to highlight that in the mnemonic as much as we can. So, peeing. I'm sorry. I know this is the second time I'm bringing up peeing in this video. Apologies, but sometimes these connections work. So peeing, and appropriate. Peeing on something cheap. So something is cheap. Then it's appropriate to pee on it. Okay, so that's a silly connection, but I could type that down. I'm not going to write that down right now, but you certainly could if you wanted to. So it's cheap. It doesn't matter if you pee on it because it's cheap. You can just buy another one. Okay, that works. So I could write that down as a connection to the characters. But let's just what do I think of personally when I think of cheap? I think of as a scene from Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels where he's saying cheap, like the budgie. There's a quote, but I don't think that's going to quite work here. But it could. I could say lock, stock, cheap, cheap. So they're in the apartment. I remember that scene very vividly. No, that's not going to work. Cheap, like the budgie. Okay, what else is cheap? Talk is cheap. Think of like word associated. Let's type in the word cheap. Cheap stock. Cheap IKEA sofa bed. Cheapest car. Let's go for the cheapest car. Nice. There's those little smart cars. Cheap electric car. So I could put that in as a picture reference. It's very convenient and it's appropriate for someone very small. So I could put in a picture of someone who is very small or quite short, like a certain singer that I'm aware of that's very short, for example, and I could put a picture of him next to the car just in my flashcards, and I could say this car will be very convenient and appropriate for this person, and I could write a note just so I'm clear. Okay. Next one, 左边. This is so obvious. This is like the characters are so easy that I would not really bother connecting to the characters in this. I would say 左边, 左边, 左边. Does that 左边? That doesn't really connect to anything audio for me. I would just choose something that represents the left. On your left, on your left. I can think of a runner. There's a movie called Spanglish. On your left. Right, on your left. Yeah, this exact scene, perfect. It's not actually, it's not one of my favorite films, but I just remember this film. I've seen many films, and I remember she's the wife, and she's like the maid who sort of builds a relationship with Adam Sandler. I remember the scene very well, and she's like on your left, and she tries to race her, but she just beats her. And it's cool. It's quite funny. So I get that image and I put that in. And that'd be enough for me because the word's just so simple. I just get a picture that represents left side and move on. Next we've got 所以. So 所 means place by means of. These are two tough characters. They're very old characters. They're very abstract. So it can be tough. 所以. So I'm not going to really connect to the characters here. Place by means of. It means therefore. What connection do we have to therefore? And so, yeah, it's a tough one. So I'm just going to first I'm going to type in therefore. So yeah, it's not good. It's going to be mainly like English lessons about what therefore means. It's not enough. So I need to visualize it. Who says that? Who says therefore? I'm thinking of a lawyer making a case. Closing a lawyer. I'm thinking, and so not just any lawyer, not just a lawyer. I'm thinking of a specific film, and 所以. Okay, so let's come back to that. So I just looked at the sound and said the sound out loud. 所 also means lock in Chinese. It's obviously a different character, but it's the exact same pronunciation. So lock and he, it could be he again. Like, you know, that's the cool thing about Chinese. I could just keep using that. When I see a yi, a e sound, I could just always reference it back to he. I could always say, oh, that's always he in English. That's my sort of mnemonic anchor to that sound mnemonic, if you like. I locked him, or yi could also mean you in like old timey English. It's like an Amish person, or I've never met one, but apparently, based on my understanding of pop culture and like what I've heard, that's how they talk. But maybe not. But you know, just generally old timey people. So I'm going to lock you away, therefore, or I locked him away, therefore it couldn't have been him. So I'm connecting it back to my lawyer idea. Okay, so I'll search for sentencing. So sentencing. So I get an image of someone being sentenced to life. Yeah, like this is a good sentenced to prison rather. So then I could take this image. 所以 he locked him away. Locked he away. Is this fine? You know, that'll work fine. So 所以 he committed, let's say, I don't know, he committed a crime. Therefore, they swore. That's the character for swore. They swore he away. All right, so that would, I just put that in italics there. Yeah, that mnemonic will work okay. And if it didn't work okay for some reason, like the next time I went to review my flashcards, do you know what? I'd think of another one. 难受, difficult to accept. So that's quite straightforward, right? To feel bad, to feel unhappy is the meaning. 难受. Nan is actually grandma in English. We would say my nan. That could keep that in the back pocket if I want to use that. But difficult to accept. I just imagine someone accepting difficult news. So I get doctor. You know, this is quite, again. Sorry to say this. It's quite sad, but doctor giving bad news. So we can do that. Another idea. Yeah, so that would work. I just take one of these images and that image on its own would be fine, but I could also just, difficult to accept. I could just write that out in my note for this particular word. That would work. Next is 来自, 来自. Immediately I look at the pinyin of this and I think of lazy. Like, it looks like lazy, lazy. It's kind of spelt like it in a weird way as well. So I think of lazy. I don't know where. So you maybe use that as fodder. To come from somewhere, come, to come, and oneself. It's kind of a weird character combination. So I would say I come from a lazy place. To come from a place, 来自, lazy. That's not really working for me. There's something there, but maybe because I've been doing this too long. If you do this for more than, say, like 10, 15 minutes, you start to need a break. And if you have like a 5-minute break and you come back, you tend to be much better. To come from, lazy. Okay. So I just saw the Homer Simpson there. So okay, so lazy, that must come from your father. So I'm thinking of a father and son being lazy together. Yeah. So maybe I get that picture, and I would put in something to do with his laziness. Laziness must come from his father. All right. Now that's got a small issue, which is it's not the real meaning of the word, right? But sometimes the connection is so good that you remember that it's no problem. But you could also just say to come from. Just get a picture of a British passport for me. Yeah. So British passport. And then who knows? Maybe there's even funny. Can I get a funny image too? There you go, Mr. Bean. Boom. There, I just put that in as well, or either or. So with this final one, I've already got some ideas about where we can go with this. So for example, sui ran, su he ran. So he got sued and then he ran. Right? Su he ran. Oh, sue Iran, to actually sue the country of Iran. So I find the leader of that country. I imagine I put him in. I find a picture of him in a courtroom. You get the idea. Right? I could go that way, but as this is the last one, I'll show you a few other resources that you can use to find images and connections. So the first one is clip art. So you search for the word and then you add the word clip art at the end, and it can really help solidify some of those more abstract terms, or at least send your brain elsewhere. Now, I can't think of anything for this particularly, but it often helps. Sometimes it will trigger something else. Sometimes the picture is not ideal, but it will trigger another thought process. So this guy, he's struggling. You could say, I think although he's been to the gym a lot, he's still struggling. So I could maybe do a search for a really muscular guy who can't open a jar. Like, although he's done all these exercises and he's really strong, he can't open this jar. So they can often send you that way. Another one is the noun project, and that doesn't come up with anything for this particular word, but you can search for a word like, I don't know, we could say road, like earlier, and it gives you some icons that you can use as well as the actual images. Or maybe something a bit more abstract like the word emergency. You could search for emergency, and if you don't use the actual icons, again, it can trigger something in your mind that will remind you of something to search for. So like an emergency. So you might be thinking of emergency like an injury, but I look at this icon and think, emergency like provision. So I need an emergency drop off, running out of food or whatever. So it just sends you on different directions. So this is a very good one to use. And finally, this is just a personal favorite. Not everyone will be into The Simpsons, of course. Certainly not for the last 20 years, but the This is called the Frinkiac generator. You search in certain words, and if you've watched a lot of The Simpsons, right, which I personally have, it will come up with all sorts of scenes that you can use. And again, same deal. Um, this scene I remember quite well. Although he's very old, he still managed to steal everyone's. I can't remember what he did, but he stole something. So I'd just get a picture of that, and I can make a meme as well. Look at that. You can make a GIF. You can put GIFs in your flashcards if you like. And although I have stolen your, oh look, they even have a quote. That's just beautiful, isn't it? And the exact episode number. So that's something that you could do, and it will help. Sorry I didn't mention that earlier in the video, but I thought I'd save this for the end. To reward those who watched all the way through. So there you go, guys. That's enough examples, I think, and I hope that's made it clear about how to choose your images and how to connect with the characters and the sounds and apply your own personal experiences, your own personal memories